Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Terra Mystica, which is a board game that was originally released in 2012. This one accommodates 2 to 5 players and takes around 30 minutes per player. Now, despite being an older game, this game is still regarded as one of the best Euro-style games out there on the market and is pretty influential in what it did and what it continues to do. As you can tell from the box art here, this is set in a fantasy land and the main game takes place on this board here. And this is what the game is going to look like at the end of a 2-player game. You have all these different buildings out there. You have all these different types of terrain in these hexes. And as the game goes on, you are kind of terraforming this land to try and put your terrain on those hexes so you can live there, build your buildings and get points in different ways, such as climbing tracks, getting upgrades on your player boards, doing things at a certain time based on this side track here, and ultimately trying to beat your opponent on how many points you get. So as I said, each player has their own unique race. So for example, we've got the witches here, and all those races have their own special abilities and their own strengths and their own weaknesses. So for example, the witches here are really good when they build towns or when they establish towns by building a certain amount of buildings next to each other of a certain strength. Then they get a bonus 5 points. Additionally, as you upgrade more and more buildings, you can get unique abilities such as this one here, where I can spend this action in order to establish a new little town in an existing spot on the board for free. And again, all the different races do different things and have their own strengths and their own weaknesses. So despite this game being pretty advanced and having a lot of things going on, each individual player board I think does a great job of explaining what you can do, what your options are, and how much things cost, and the kind of fallout for each action you take. So for example, here on this bottom section of the board has all your different types of buildings, the cost to put them out, and the kind of chain that you need to follow in order to put them out. So for example, to build these buildings here, I need to have a house, and I kind of follow this arrow so I could build one of those, and I'd replace it if I choose to build it. And again, if I want to get one of these big strongholds out, I'd have to pay this cost here, but I'd have to follow this chain of command again, go from this building to this building, or I can go from this building to this building, and then this building to this building. And as you can see, as you place more and more of these buildings onto the main board, you are unlocking these different actions or these different income beneath those buildings. So the more you have on the board, when it comes to the start of each new round, you're going to be intaking more and more resources. So for example, for each of these houses I get down, I get one of these resource cubes, which are pretty much used for everything, again, for putting more buildings down, etc. For these townhouses here, you get money and you get power. Power is useful because when you gain power, you kind of shift from bowl to bowl, like this, and once you get them into this last bowl, you can actually spend them to get bonus actions such as getting these new priests, getting more cubes, getting money, or even taking these actions on the board here, such as getting a big chunk of money, being able to terraform land, getting more action cubes, getting more priests, and building bridges to connect your towns together. Additionally, these ones here, these big, I think they're called temples or something, they are going to give you an income of these priests, and these priests are excellent tools because not only do they let you climb up these tracks, for example, which will increase your shipping ability, so it can let you expand into new lands. So for every shipping you have, you can kind of cross the oceans. And you can even climb up this track here to make terraforming different types of land easier, because every different race has a different kind of wheel here, and it will mean, well, this basically shows what you need to spend in order to terraform different types of land into your type of land. So for example, in order for me to change one of these river tokens into a forest token, which I need to live in, I'd have to spend 1 shovel. And again, I would be able to just replace it like so, as long as I'm adjacent to one. So let's say or if I was next to this one, I could just replace it like this. And the final one here is the big temple. They again will give you another income, but they'll also reduce the amount of buildings that you would need to establish a town. And establishing a town is a good way of getting victory points and getting follow-up bonuses, because whenever you establish a kind of connecting lot of buildings, having a combined strength of 7, so the big buildings are worth 3, the middle buildings are worth 2, and the small buildings are worth 1 each, then you can take one of these tokens, which will give you an amount of points and also give you bonus actions such as, again, getting cubes, getting power, climbing up these tracks, which will give you more power when you reach certain thresholds, and will give you points at the end of the game. So for every track you are on the top of, you get 8 points, and the runner-up, I believe, gets 4 points. Additionally, the player with the most different buildings, or the biggest connecting region of buildings, is going to get a big chunk of points based on this track here. Again, 18, 12 and 6 points. And to correct myself here, the tracks here again, 8, 4 and 2 points. And at the end of the game, each 3 coins you have left is going to score you 1 point. Also on this side track here, you are incentivized to do different things in the different rounds. So again, you've got 6 rounds in the game. The first one's starting here, which means that for every house I build in the first round, I'm going to get 2 points. And additionally, at the end of the round, you are going to be able to look at the track that you've got here. So for example, I've climbed pretty high on this fire track, and I'm currently sat at the number 7 position. So for every 4 I've got up that track, I can get 4 power. So I'd only get 1, but if I got up to that 8th spot, I'd be able to do that twice and get a massive 8 power. But of course, the chances of me doing that this early in the game are really unlikely. So once the round's finished, they'll flip face down, and you move on and on and on, and get points based on, getting your massive buildings down. Each kind of time you terraform, you get 2 points. Each of these townhouses you get down, you get 3 points, and stuff like that. So yeah, you're kind of incentivized to do things at certain times. Additionally, at the start of each round, you're going to get to draft one of these bonus tokens, which will increase your income, such as getting coins again, cubes, etc., increasing your sailing ability, gaining power, getting bonuses or points in terms of what you do in that round. So if I had this bonus token, if I erected one of my massive buildings, I get a bonus 4 points. The one I have here is just taking a bunch of money, and the one my opponent has here is to get a cube and to get power. And that's quite interesting, because once you choose to pass as an action, you put it back into the fold, meaning that you get the first dibs on the next tiles available. And the more a tile gets neglected, then they're going to start accumulating money on them. Also, whenever you build one of these buildings here, you also get to select one of these bonus tokens, and these are really useful because they let you climb tracks very quickly, or they give you kind of game-breaking powers. For example, once per turn, you can climb up any track of your choice. You get points based on how many of these townhouses you have down. You can do this ones here, so you can actually establish towns based on 6 buildings rather than the normal 7, etc. And all of these kind of synergize with the different races that you have. So again, going back to my player board here, I'm massively incentivized to establish as many towns as I can, because again, I get a bonus 5 points when I do that. So having something like this token here, where I'd only have to build 6 buildings to start to establish a town, is going to be a good strategy to go for and going to play to my strengths. So hopefully that gives you an impression about how the game works. Of course, there are some more things that go into this one, because again, it is pretty involved, but I think it's more important to share my impressions on this one and see what I think about it and what things you have to consider when playing Terra Mystica. So first off, I think these boards are fantastic. These do a great job of signposting you on what you need to do, and you'll start to understand that the order in which you do things is highly important in this game, because you might think initially, let's just go down and start smashing all these houses down as quickly as I can, terraforming as much land as I possibly can. However, you'll start to understand that your almost cash flow in this game is highly important, because of course, whenever you put one of these buildings down, you are going to unlock a new cube, which is a great thing because you want to be having as many cubes as you can. However, to build a building in the first place is going to cost you coins, and it's going to cost you even another cube, sorry. And additionally, when you choose to upgrade those to these higher buildings, you are going to remove that back to your main board, like so, meaning that you're gaining lower income in the future rounds. And that applies to everything, because once you build these townhouses, which of course you want to have them all on the board, so you get a massive income of money and power. But when you start replacing them with the other buildings, then they're going to come straight back onto your board, again, making the future income lower and lower and lower. You want to expand here quickly because you want to get your unique ability down and be able to abuse that as much as possible. But at the same time, you want to start getting these priests into the fold because you want to start climbing these tracks, because time is limited and it all corresponds together because, again, you want to climb these tracks because at the end of the round you want to get as much mileage as you can out of these bonuses. So if you're really high on a certain track, you're going to get a lot more out of it than your opponents might do. And of course, you want to be fighting for those top slots in order to get those maximum 8 points at the end of the game. And additionally, this ties into establishing towns because you can't actually break that final barricade and get to the top without having established a town for each one. There really is a race for a lot of things here. Again, climbing those tracks, establishing the towns in the first place, getting those buildings down so you get these bonuses here, building a correct infrastructure so you get the best income and a sustainable kind of income throughout the whole game. And that spinning all those plates is very difficult. Knowing when to pass is important to get the bonus tile that you need for the next round. Do you need to start terraforming? And so you've got more space to move into. To do that, taking this one's going to be excellent because it's a free option to do so. Are you going to start generating points by having these buildings down early and trying to get the most out of a tile like this? Having power is important because it gives you so much flexibility in terms of getting the resources you need. But additionally, getting these follow-up actions here, which are quite powerful. Getting a big cash income of 7 coins per turn by spending 4 power is great. But having to consider that whenever you charge up power, they always come from the lowest bowl into the next one, meaning that you can't just fast track it into this bowl unless you take this bonus action here, which just basically bins off power, but shifts the equal amount into the next bowl, reducing your overall power in the future, which can be quite an important decision because having less power can be not the best at times, but it also can be good at fast tracking things around so your different pools here don't get clogged up and don't get slowed down in a bottleneck. So again, this all comes together, and it might sound pretty simple when you have it explained to you like this, but getting it played in motion and actually doing it practically is pretty difficult and is quite taxing in what you're going to do and how you're going to play most efficiently. And games like that are what fascinate me. I will say that when I finished this game for the first time, I certainly kind of ruled over my own mistakes. I started thinking, I should have done this, I should have done that. And it's those kind of games for me that keep getting to the table and keep me intrigued and keep me interested. Surprisingly, one of the things I like the most about Terra Mystica is the pacing of the game. You initially start with, of course, one of the 6 rounds with the bare bones. You just got your starting income, etc. Placing a few houses down. You'll start with a couple on the board already, maybe getting an upgrade, trying to milk a few points out of this. But you'll quickly find you are out of resources, you're passing already, and you think you haven't established much or haven't achieved much at all. And that almost follows into the next round and even the round after. But when you hit that halfway mark, you start to feel more powerful. And I think the game arc in this game is fantastic. You start to climb the track, start getting more from these bonuses here. You start to maybe collect 1 or 2 of these bonus actions, and these can go a long way and can give you something else to build towards. You start having a massive income of all cubes and stuff, so not only are you building 1 or 2 buildings, you're building 3 or 4. You can terraform a few bits of land. You can invest in these different things. Perhaps you have a spare priest to put down on the board and climb a track to try and beat your opponent. So yeah, there's a lot to think about here. And I think, again, that game arc, that progression, I think is fantastic. And, starting from the first round and comparing it to the last round, they are just poles apart. And it feels like you get more and more powerful as the game develops. Now, despite there being so much going on in Terra Mystica, the actual player aids and what you can do a great job of actually keeping turns quick and keeping the game moving, because while you have 8 options here, they're all pretty simple in what they do. So just terraform a bit of land and put a building on it if you can afford to do so. You can do one of your upgrades, which again, lightning quick. You can upgrade a building to another building. You can place a priest onto the track and climb a track. You can use one of the power abilities here, or perhaps one of your unique ones as well. Or you can pass. So they're all really simple, and there isn't much downtime. There isn't much mulling over what you're going to do, and turns do tick along pretty quickly, and generally more often than not you can focus on what you're doing without having to worry too much about what your opponent's doing. Now, there is some player interaction in the game. Of course, there is the tension for the track, the tension of trying to get the biggest cluster of buildings down to get those big points at the end. But additionally, it has quite an interesting rule where you are not only incentivized to go on your own and try to establish your own little colony, I suppose, by by having land to build into. Building next to other people is almost a good idea at times as well, because whenever you have a building and somebody either places a building next to you or upgrades a building, you have the option to lose points to establish power. And that's quite an interesting choice to make. So you always lose one fewer points than the amount of power that you can potentially gain. So if somebody places this massive building here, like they have, I could gain 3 power, and again shift it from bowl to bowl, but I would have to lose 2 points. And if you've got people of equal skill in this game, then every point is going to be important, and weighing up that decision is going to be equally as important. Another facet of the player interaction is these power spots here. I love the way that as soon as somebody goes to one of these spots, then it is blocked off for the remainder of the round. And that can be really frustrating at times, but in a good way, because I love games that have that tension. You need to know when to prioritize things, and this game has a lot of that, because you want to be the first to do a lot of things. You want to be the first one to collect these actions that you want to take. You want to be the first one to grab these higher values here, because there's only one value by placing a priest that moves it up 3 spots, which could be a difference maker. And of course, you might want to be the first to terraform a piece of land into your own before an opponent gets to do so. So yeah, there is just embedded interaction here, whether it's passive or not. I think it just works really well without being too in your face. The level of replayability in this game is very high. Not only is it the kind of game that rewards repeated plays because of the strategies and the kind of amending your mistakes in the previous games, this is certainly a game that you can get better and better at, and is going to reward you in that way. But also there's a ton of these different player boards, all different factions. They're double-sided for added replayability. So yeah, there's certainly lots to try here, and each game is going to make you go a different route depending on the faction you choose. I can't testify fully if they're balanced as they could be. Again, this is more of a first impression review, whereas people who've played this game hundreds of times, which there certainly are, would be able to give a better impression of that. But as far as I can see, I'm really happy with the variety of the different characters here. Additionally, you've got a different amount of these bonus tiles that come out depending on the player count, and a lot of them aren't used every game, so again, more replayability there. The different structure of the rounds is going to jiggle about, so it's going to change the pacing and the tempo of the game depending on that setup. So I love the legs here, and it's certainly going to be a game that you can get to the table again and again and again without being bored and without feeling samey. I am perfectly happy with the way the game looks. I think it's nice and clear. All the iconography is pretty good. Again, I love the player boards. I think they do a great job of explaining what you can do, what your options are, what things are going to cost. So I all think this is quite intuitive once you get that initial rules dump on you. Yeah, it's not going to be the easiest thing to explain initially, but again, once you're over that steep learning curve, it actually flows very nicely, and the components do a good job of explaining that and facilitating that. All the different pieces are different. The actual physical production of the game is also top quality. You've got these nice big chunky wooden blocks on each of your buildings, etc. The actual cardboard stock is top quality. All these tokens are really robust. The player boards are nice and strong. I'm actually really happy with the production, and it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be actually. And it looks a lot better in person than I think it does through a camera. So yeah, perfectly happy with the production, and the artwork, aesthetics, symbology, etc. I think is more than up to scratch. So to be perfectly honest, when I first started playing this game, I was struggling to find where the fun came from. I was struggling to find how we were going to progress at all. I was really struggling for resources. I had a really bad infrastructure here. And I was just really pondering about how I was going to achieve anything and get anything done at all. By the halfway point in the game, I was only getting a few points up on this track, and I never thought I'd end up right at the top, etc. But once that penny dropped and I started to understand the mistakes I've made, and it was all on me and not on the design of the game, and then I started to appreciate how well tied in everything is to each other. So, for example, you do want to be going to every single chain here. You want to get everything done, but it's all about prioritizing what you're going to do and maybe taking a short-term hit in order to get a long-term benefit. You might want to smash one of these big buildings down straight away, but at the same time, you're neglecting something else. So it's about what you're going to do in this particular circumstance and how you're going to benefit by taking a certain route over the other. And I love the fact that, the more you place on the board, you're going to have to put other things back onto your player board, which cut the other symbols up. And that's one of my favourite things in these kind of Euro-style games. I love it when games do that. And every kind of action has a reaction. And this game is completely full of that kind of thing. I like the incentive of having room to build into your own, but also being somewhat encouraged to build close to someone else so you can get more power. Power is a real hardship to get at first, but the more buildings you get down again, the more you're going to start generating power, and it starts swirling around your machine and you can use it to your benefit. So yeah, this is a very deep game. A video like this is very hard to describe the kind of nuances, again, the kind of tricks you can do, the different paths you can take. But hopefully it gives you somewhat of an idea and impression about how this works and how things click together. And it is marvellous. It is so much fun. And I was worried about it also being a bit kind of overstaying its welcome, taking a bit too long, being a bit tedious and just going through the motions. That is not the case at all. This has a very high fun factor, as well as having that deep kind of interlocking synergies and again, consequences for your actions. And I love that. I love how you've got to race for different things. The player interaction is there, although it's not in your face, it's still meaningful. And I'm really, really happy with Terra Mystica. It is as good as people say it is, and it certainly gets a strong, strong recommendation from me, which I suppose just adds to the pile of positive reviews out there. So highly recommend checking out Terra Mystica. This one gets my elite shield, so the best of the best. And hopefully the video has been somewhat useful to you. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or at least somewhat entertaining, then please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Additionally, if you wish to support the show, because I am a one-man operation and I don't get any support from publishers, then please consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/chairman of the board, where you can back for as little as £2 per month. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.